Scars make the best, my mind takes flight.
Can I ask you something? Is there a word, just one word, that someone said to you, maybe when you were young, maybe even just a few years ago or a few months ago, and it never left? Like it just settled somewhere in your chest and made a home there, whether you wanted it or not? I have one. And I've been thinking about it a lot lately. And it's not because I'm stuck in it or on it. I'm actually in a season of a lot of reflections right now. And a lot of looking back and finally being able to name things that I didn't have a language for before. And this one keeps coming up. This one word, this one afternoon, this one moment that on the surface probably looked small to everyone else in that room. But for me, it rewired something. So that's what we're going to start up today, the setup. For those of you who know me from outside of social media, or even in social media, I've shared the story a couple times. I came to the United States with a foster family. Now, I'm not going to go too much into details about the whole story right now because everything that's happening in this country politically with immigration, with the way things are moving, I'm going to have to be careful in what I share and when I do share it. I am a U.S. citizen. I'm not going anywhere. Well, I am. I'm going to relocate, inshallah ta'ala, make hijrah. But I'd be lying if I said anything feels safe right now in this country, if he ever felt safe. So for a fuller conversation is for that, migration to here will be another time when things possibly settle, or when I have fully relocated out of here, okay? All right. So what I tell you is this, or what I will tell you is this. I arrived here carrying things that most kids shouldn't be able to bear, even adults couldn't hold. I had already survived and was surviving things that by that age that I should never have to survive. Sexual abuse, violation, trauma that my little body and my little mind had no framework for. Because how do you make sense of something like that when you're still a child? When your nervous system's still forming, when you haven't fully learned how to exist in the world yet. And I was landed here in America, put into a grade that was above my grade level, my comprehension level. I had to learn fast English, reading comprehension, middle school math, science, all of it without a foundation. The only thing that I walked in there were my numbers that I knew in Swahili and my ABCs in English. Wallahi, that was it. So my mind had to develop faster than it was supposed to be compared to people at my age group. I had to adapt to an environment that was already overwhelming on a good day, and there weren't many good days at that time because underneath all of it, I was still processing things that hasn't been processed, still carrying weight that hadn't been named, still trying to figure out how to just be a person as a child and in a country that didn't feel like mine yet. That's who I was. That's the child we're going to be talking about today, the little girl. It was the afternoon. I remember that clearly because the light, the timing, the day where I was sitting at, I was at the computer. You know, those early 2000 computers, the big heavy monitors, the tower humming at the floor next to you. The computer was my scapegoat. Even then, even when my writing was barely making sense, I would just write whatever came out, streams of consciousness, no filter. It didn't matter if it was good. It just had to get out of me and onto something. That was the only place I felt like I had that felt like was mine. It was mine. So I'm sitting there, and someone from our community was at the house that day, and a letter came in the mail, and it got handed to me per usual because I was the one, I was the oldest child. I'm going to school. I should know how to read. I should be able to translate, interpret. I was the one who was supposed to know English. So the expectation was read this, understand it, and translate what it says into Somali. I couldn't do it. I still didn't have the vocabulary yet. I didn't have the reading level for that kind of formal language yet. I was still learning. I was still a child or still a kid who had been in this country for a relatively short time. It's one thing to read something and then comprehending it and then translating it that to your native language, your native tongue. It wasn't that I couldn't read it. I read it, but I just didn't know how to translate that into our language, translate that into a way that they would understand it. Well, he would understand it, not they. So I'm still building the foundation that everyone around me assumed I already had. And in front of that person, in front of this guest that we had in our house, I was called stupid. Just like that, flat, certain, like it was a fact. And I want to tell you that happened, what happened to my body, because I think that's the part that matters the most when I try to connect it back to like RSD, which you can also, by the way, watch the YouTube shorts that I created in regards to that, what RSD is and what it does to the body and how it affects the person. While you're at it, you made it this far, be sure to subscribe, like, comment, and share all the content that I'm sharing on this channel with your friends, families, or just share it for the sake of benefiting others that might be able to find it beneficial. So, my chest got tight, not metaphorically, like physically tight, like something heavy had just been placed directly into my sternum. My eyes got hot. That was that very specific kind of hot. That means that the tears are right there, right at the surface, trying to come out. And I remember it so clearly, guys. Widening my eyes, holding them open, trying to not let them come out because I remember. And of course, me widening the eyes didn't make it any better because now winds are going into my eyes and stuff. So I didn't want that ass turned up, y'all. So I said, nah, I'm not gonna cry, especially not in front of this person. Nah, crying didn't feel safe. Showing that it got to me wasn't safe, so I held it. I sat there with a tight chest, burning eyes, and I held every single thing that I was feeling completely inside my body. And then I turned back to the computer, just feeling like piece of garbage. I am nothing. I am empty. I am I'm nothing. Like feeling empty. I'm useless. I don't know what I was writing that day, but I didn't continue writing. As soon as that guest left, I walked to my room and just sat there, sat on the bed. Me and my little sister were sharing beds or sharing, we always shared rooms, so sharing rooms, not beds. And it just, like that word, stupid. You are stupid. Like, stupid ete. That's how we say it in Somali. Stupid ete. Like, you're stupid. That's what he said. And I was just dumbfounded. Now, did I know what that word meant? The thing that still gets me when I think about it is that I didn't even know what that word meant yet because in that household, we don't use words like that ever. I just knew from the tone, the way he came out, the way the air shifted, the way the other person in the room didn't say anything. I knew it wasn't good. I knew it wasn't meant to make I knew it was meant to make me feel small, and I filed it away, tucked it somewhere deep, the way that you do with things that you don't have the tools to deal with yet. Months later, I found out what it actually meant. And I remember sitting with that, really sitting with it, thinking, so that's what, what you genuinely thought of me? Not in a moment of frustration, not by accident. That was the conclusion you reached about who I was. That was the conclusion I came into terms with. And honestly, the part that hurt the most wasn't even the word itself, I would say. It was that I had been trying. I wasn't a difficult child. I wasn't defiant. I didn't talk back. If anything, my entire existence was built around not rocking the boat, around sensing what energy in the room was before I even walked into it fully, around measuring every word before it came out of my mouth the best I could, and even then, second guessing whether I should have said it at all. So I would feel something, a reaction rising in me, something I wanted to say almost immediately, I'd be running through the consequences if I say this. How will they take it? How will they say it back to me? How will it land on me? How long am I going to replay this conversation after it ends? And most of the time, I would just cut it short, go quiet, decide it wasn't worth the aftermath that would live inside of my head for the rest of the day, the rest of the week, sometimes even longer. That was my normal, meaning managing not just the situation in front of me, but the entire internal fallout that would come after it. Now, if you're an immigrant, you know the weight of being smart or being academically smart weighs on a child. Academically, I was held at a higher standard, and I want to be careful how I say this because I understand that people have expectations of children, and that's not always wrong. You need to have expectations for your kids, right? Standards for your kids. But when the standards doesn't account for where the child is actually, when there is no room for this child is still catching up, this child came from someplace somewhere else, this child mind has already been through things that affect how she learns or how he learns, then the standard stops being a motivator and starts being another source of shame. And that's what my academic had turned into for me. So if I didn't perform the way that I was expected of me, I wasn't just struggling, I was stupid. I was a dummy. I wasn't enough. What I produced was not enough. And I would carry those words not just for the afternoon, that was said. I would carry them and stack them up on top of what was each other and revisit them and turn them over and wonder what they said about me. It would replay in my head the days that I know my progress report is coming out being sent home. I'm like, oh, Demisha, I'm dying. It's death. I would dread it. I hated my progress reports being sent. I hated parent teacher conferences. Like, hated it with every fiber in my being. The only class that I would say I was always excited, especially when it came to parent teacher conferences or my progress report, was English writing. That was different. That was the one place that I felt like I wasn't behind once I got onto it. That was the one place something in me just clicked and I could breathe. My writing class, my English class, that was my scapegoat, my real one. Not just from the difficulty of everything else academically, but from the reality that was often too heavy to just sit inside without somewhere to open it. I think about that a lot now. How writing saved me before I fully understood what saving myself meant. Oh, that's making me want to cry. But I'm 30 now, going to 31 in the summer, inshallah. And the older I get, the more the more I reflect, the more I look back at that child, that little girl, and I start to understand her in ways I couldn't when I was living it. The way she moved through the world, the way she anticipated rejection before it even arrived, the way a single critical word would unravel her internally while she sat completely still on the outside. The way people, I feel like I was a people pleaser, not because I was naturally agreeable, but because I was protecting myself from feeling, or I should say, protecting herself from feeling that came when she didn't. That's masking, and that's what we call it now, right? And underneath the masking was a brain that was wired differently, a brain that processed things faster than it could regulate them, a brain that felt everything at a volume that most people around her didn't understand and couldn't see because she was so good at making sure they couldn't see it. And again, I talked about RSD in a carousel that I posted. It's going to be on YouTube Shorts. It's also on Instagram. If you haven't seen it, go watch it first because I break it down and I don't want to just repeat myself here. But what I will say is that understanding RSD doesn't fix everything, obviously, or ADHD doesn't fix everything, right? It makes a it's not going to erase the memory of that afternoon. It's not going to erase my trauma as a child. The background noise that has been running for years, that one whisper, you're not enough, you missed the mark. What did they mean by that? And you are upset with it. It gets a little bit quieter because now I have a name for it. And when you can name something, you stop being fully at its mercy. Okay? I'll say that again. When you can name something, you stop being fully at its mercy. So I wasn't stupid. I'm not stupid. I was a child in an environment that was designed for someone else, carrying weight that no one acknowledged, with a brain that was doing the absolute most just to keep me functioning, and I adapted. I survived. I sat at that computer with hot tears and a tight chest, and I froze at that moment. And now I am a mother. I have a son who has ADHD and he's developmentally delayed and some other things, right? And there are moments where more than I can count where I look at him and I just know what's happening inside of him before he can say a word. I can see it. The way his body's tense, the way his eyes shift, the way he's talking, and all of that stuff, right? And I go to a place in my heart that's so soft, so protective, and so fierce all at once that it's hard to describe. I want to say something though, right? Because I know how it sounds when a mother talks about one child a certain way. I love all of my kids, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. You know, all praises to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every one of them equally, completely, without conditions. But every child has a different needs, right? Every child has different needs. And that's not favoritism. That's just basically you're dividing your attentiveness to one child more than the other one because one requires more of you showing up, more of you being present and stuff, and all of that stuff. So that's showing up for that kid, and right now his needs require a level of presence and understanding that I'm still actively learning how to give, partly because I'm still learning how to give it myself. And that's just the honest truth of it. So when I catch myself responding to him in a certain way, softer, more patient, more careful with my tone, part of it is just me parenting him the way I wish someone had parented me, the way I needed, the way that the child at that computer deserved, the way that little me deserved, the way that the little girl me deserved. You know what I mean? So that's that. I made it. I want to say that clearly and without rushing it. I made past it, alhamdulillah. Because I think sometimes in these kind of conversations, we spend so much time in the pain that we forget to acknowledge that we survived. We're here. I made it. I learned English. I can read, write. I would consider myself very, very good writer, right? Have a book out that's on Amazon if you want to check it out. I graduated with my bachelor's degrees. Now, with a bachelor degree, I have several certifications like a mental health first aid and all of that stuff. We have a nonprofit organization called Pillar. I graduated. I made it. I'm a mother. I'm a wife. I'm building something. I have my own LLC, and I will continue to build something. And I did that all with a brain that was never fully understood, in circumstances that were never fully accounted for, carrying things that most people would never have to carry. I'm not the perfect mother. I'm not the perfect wife. No one is perfect in this world, but I'm not perfect, and I'm always learning. I'm always trying. I have my moments where I do spiral. Like this week, I've been spiraling a lot on little things. It's triggering and just a lot of things, right? And I feel like you surviving, you need to acknowledge that that deserves to be said. And to that little girl sitting at the big computer, eyes wide, holding everything in, I see you. You weren't stupid. You were somewhere in the middle of the hardest things you have ever been asked to do, and you were doing it anyways. You didn't have anyone to tell you that your brain was just wired differently. The environment was, you can say the problem, and not me, not you necessarily. That word they used said everything, you know, about their limitation of understanding you as an adult, and nothing about yours. So I'm telling you now, and I'm telling everyone watching this and who has their own version of that afternoon, their own word that settled and made a home, your own moment that is still replaying in your head. You deserved better than that. You deserved better then, and you deserve better now. And you deserve to understand yourself now. Seek the help that could help you understand yourself. Again, go ahead and watch that carousel. If you haven't, it breaks down RSD in a way that maybe I think it will make sense of a lot of the things. Drop a comment. Tell me if any of it resonated with you, especially if you're an African, if you're an immigrant, and share this with someone who needs to hear it, because I promise you, someone in your circle does. As always, I leave you in the care of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Subscribe, like, and share. Bye.